Yo guys, what's going on? Robert Warshack here, and I'll be going over the top 5 decks as of now. We got a balance patch not too long ago. This video normally comes out a day or two after the balance patch, but I need a little bit more time to see how this meta was shaking out and what was happening and what are the front runners of some really good decks for you guys to play, hopefully to legend or whatever rank you're trying to get to. So first things first, pure Paladin. This is already a deck that's been pretty good in the past. A lot of people already still play it, but it did get this new card with the mini set, the Pure, and when he first came out, he wasn't actually a mech, but now he's a mech. He makes the deck a lot more synergistic. It also runs the Light Blade because it runs a couple buffs like for Qualthes. So this deck is actually, it's pretty good. It has a lot of early game to it, as you can see, a lot of 1, 2, and 3 drops here. And it looks like it can't go into the late game too much, but it does have the Countress. So the core of like your late game / middle of the game where you're going to win if you don't already win in the early game, because the deck's just pretty quick and has a lot of buffs in it. As you play Order in the Court, Order in the Court's always going to draw you Light Raise, Countress, and Blood Crusader first. Pure also draws a lot of those cards as well. And then you get to play Blood Crusader on turn 6, or if you have coin, you coin out Blood Crusader, and then you get to play the Countress very early on in the game. Most of the time, your opponent won't have done a lot of damage to you because this deck is very aggressive. So most of the time, you'll have the board. Taking 7 damage from the Blood Crusader is not a big deal. And then from there, you play the legendary tickets, and we all know how good those legendary tickets are. So a lot of early game, very strong mid game. However, it does not run Carriel. It doesn't run a lot of the quality city attack stuff like that. That is a different build of Paladin, but this is the one that seems to be performing the best, and it's not a surprise. It's a more aggressive type deck. Aggressive type decks are doing really good right now because any deck that isn't aggressive, you're able to just win. You know what I mean? So control decks do take quite a bit of time to like figure out why they're going to be good and how to counter the aggro decks and very powerful mid-range decks, because right now Hearthstone swing turns are actually insane. Like the power level of these mid-range and aggro decks are pretty nutty. So moving off of Paladin and into Death Knight, we have ourselves a triple Unholy Death Knight here. It did recently get changed with Construct Quarter going to 4 mana instead of 3. I think that's fair now. Construct Quarter is still a really powerful card. It's still good. You still auto-include 2 of these most of the time into your Death Knight decks. It just is a little slower and a little bit not as good, but still fantastic card. Very good. So, as we know, Unholy Death Knight bases around having a ton of minions that are just generally very powerful, looking at the Necromancer, stuff like the Foul Leg on top of the Construct Quarter. Most of the time, if any minions on the board end up living, you get to go ahead and play Grave Strength, and this is just going to dominate people so hard. So your opponent's always scared of creatures living, so they're always using the removal, and eventually your opponent won't have removal. I do like the Bright Flaying in the deck because if your opponent happens to have a board or they're playing on Unholy Death Knight or any sort of board-centric deck, this guy gives you 2/2s that have Taunt and they count as corpse cards as well. So very good. If you like yourselves a nice minion-centric deck that rewards you for playing minions, even when those minions die, you're kind of happy because it's infusing stuff like Famished Fool, Sylvanas, Lord Marrowgar's getting bigger. So in my opinion, Unholy Death Knight, very fair deck, minion-centric, has a good amount of burst, has late game payoff. Not a lot of Discover in this deck. You only have the Amalgam and the Nerubian, so there's not like these giant like RNG swings with like Rune of the Archmage and stuff like that. That'll, you know what I mean? That's not part of this deck's package. Just a lot of minion battling and minions and making sure you've got the corpses to use your corpse cards. So Unholy Death Knight, very solid, very fun deck, and I'm sure a lot of you will enjoy that. Aggro Mage. So this is a deck that really didn't change at all. It's pretty much the same as we've seen it for the past month, I would say, or 2. And it's just good. Play a bunch of small minions that either freeze your opponent, generate spells, discount spells, create more of themselves when your opponent plays spells. You've got Frozen Touches, which is kind of like the key to your damage in the later stage of the game because you have all these small minions that are always dying. And to reward you for your small minions dying, you just keep Frozen Touching over and over again when it get infused. I haven't seen that much Druid, Priest, or even a Warrior. So your opponent having a lot of health, not really a thing right now. Some, obviously, there's people playing those classes. But, you know, being able to kill like a Rogue or a Frost DK that have no healing in their deck, you know, this deck can do that very quickly. It also runs, of course, the Skeleton package, which is very scary. So these skeletons do a lot of damage, and you have Commander Silva, which can also copy Frozen Touches, Arcane Blasts, and things like that. I also really like the Guardian in the deck because it makes your Arcane Missiles do 5 damage instead of 3. And at the end of the game, when you've got like 3 or 4 of these things in the hand, maybe even more, That's a lot of damage on top of the frozen touches that you've been sending face the whole game, plus all the skeletons. So a lot of burst in this deck. I know it looks like, oh my god, it caps off at, you know, 6 mana. Like, this isn't a control deck. This deck can go into the later stages of the game, even without Dawn Grasp. So this deck looks like very, what is this? It works. I don't know why, but it works. Every time I queue into one, I'm like, they're gonna run out of value soon. They never run out of value. I don't even, there's not even any draw in the deck. They just do it. I don't even know how. It's like hunters. Hunters have no draw, but yet their hand is always full. It's crazy. We have Fel Demon Hunter. So this is an interesting one. We didn't, after the quest for this deck got nerfed, and well, it didn't get nerfed, it got blown into oblivion. We stopped seeing, you know, the OTK quest Demon Hunter, but now I guess it's been reborn into a Fel Demon Hunter. So it runs Lady Syntho, and it doesn't even run the weapon that used to put the, you know, with the quest with the lady in the soul. You draw the lady later and then discount. It just does relic things, and then you just have a nice Fel package in here, and you've got like Silver Moon Arcanist, you've got Guild Traders, you've got Artificer, you've got Jace, you've got everything you need to do a massive amount of damage with not only relics, but you also have a massive amount of damage with the Fel cards. So being able to discount like Guild Traders and like a Jace with dimensions, and then you play both at the same time, and it's casting Fel Barrages, Unleashed Fel, all these things synergize with spell power. So this deck is able to not only, like I said, put down a lot of big relics, clear off a lot of minions, have a lot of pressure with Lady. It also has that Fel package for the later game that gets synergized with spell power, which is really, really powerful. Again, it doesn't run the weapon because first of all, it's running more than 3 minions. But second, when you run the weapon that puts the things into the souls and you discount those 1 mana souls, you're not really discounting the card, right? So now if you run Dimensions and you discount Jace, you can make Jace 4, 3, 2, 0 mana, right? But before, you couldn't really discount a card like this. And this being played alongside of other spell power cards make it a lot more powerful. So that makes sense. It's a pretty menacing deck. Haven't seen it too much, but when I do see it, it seems to work really well. I personally just still like the no minion version, just because it's a little funky and it's cool and the cards are fun. But I've seen, like I said, not a ton, but a decent amount of people play this deck. It's kind of hard. Keep that in mind. Demon Hunter has been, Fel Demon Hunter, Relic Demon Hunter, OTK Demon Hunter, always been quite difficult to pilot correctly. You can still do it and win, but if you know how to play the deck, you can have a lot more success with it than somebody who's just playing green cards. Moving to Undead Priest, I'm sure you've seen this deck. Everybody's playing Undead Priest. I don't mind it. It's not Control Priest. I don't want a 20-25 minute game. I'll take a turn 5, turn 6 win anytime. There's been a lot of renditions to this deck. The new renditions in it has been the Corporal with the Whispers of the Deep. So you're able to play a 2 mana 5/5, and then you can get rid of the, after this a minion attacks, destroy it. You can get rid of that effect with Whispers, and you get to deal 5 damage to your opponent's minions for 1 mana. So you clear the board in the early game, you swing them in the face with a 5 damage card. It's really good. Very powerful. It also runs the Hexen, which is kind of cool. I like this card a lot in the deck. I play it in mine. It just adds a lot of swinginess. You know, your opponent plays a big taunt. This deck doesn't really have a lot of removal. You just say, give me that taunt. Your opponent plays a Death Rattle minion that you don't like. You just say, give me that Death Rattle minion. There's definitely a lot of stuff you can do there. Plus, you can Whispers of the Deep your own Hexen if you don't want to give their minion back. So there's a lot of synergies there. And then, of course, it runs like Shadowed Spirit, the Haunting Nightmare, Brittle Skin. It runs all of these like very powerful 3 mana Death Rattle cards along with the Void Touched Attendant, which makes everything do more damage. So keep in mind, very aggressive deck. This deck's going to run out of cards by turn like 5 or 6. That's where the deck kind of starts. The gas is just not there anymore, right? So you got to pump hard, pump fast, and try to win as quick as possible with this deck, because it does, like I said, it does run out of gas. It doesn't run, you know, the Zarella for the late game. It doesn't run the Amulet to resurrect your Death Rattle minions. I built a more control version of this deck that can go toe-to-toe with Blood Decay, but also has the ability to win by turn 4 or 5 with Aggroness. So if you're interested, you can play this deck here, or you can look on my channel to the Shadow Priest I just posted, which personally I like more. I like a little bit more oomph and control to my decks, but not full control. So yeah, interesting deck. Don't mind Shadow Priest either. You know what it's going to do. Not a lot of discover in this deck either. We're finding these really popular decks and really good decks to have not a ton of discover in them, which is nice because it adds a little bit less to the RNG scale. So you can kind of expect, like, this is what my opponent's output of damage this turn is. How can I play around this? And I don't really mind that at all. So with that, these are the best decks. Hopefully these bring you to the rank you want to be. If you have any particular questions on these decks, feel free to ask those in the comment section below, as I do my best to try to read them and answer them as I can. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I'm Robert Warshack. Happy whatever the hell day it is.